Hope Channel, changing lives.
Good evening and welcome to the Law Chamber, where legal matters are discussed from a Christian perspective. My name is Anita Delight Dankwa, and I'm your hostess for this program. This program is live, so please, if you have any question at all, you can send it to our Facebook page and all our media handles. If you are watching us live on Multi TV, you are welcome. If you are watching us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you are very much welcome. So last week we discussed some rights. We continued last week, and today we are going to have a little bit of the rights, but this time we are looking at vulnerable groups, and we are going to look at 3 vulnerable groups. We are going to look at women, we are going to look at children, and we are going to look at the aged. Isaiah 24:4 states, "For you have been a stronghold to the poor, a stronghold to the needy in his distress, a shelter from the storm, and a shade from the heat." Musa Soko, the Chief Executive of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Network, Sierra Leone, he has something to say. He said, "A society is only as strong as its vulnerable members." A society is only as strong as its vulnerable members. So if your vulnerable members in your society are strong, then it means the society is strong. If it's not, then it means then that the society is very, very weak. So we are going to have a general discussion about vulnerable groups. We are going to zoom in on the 3 groups and then their rights. And of course, every right comes with responsibilities. So we'll also be discussing responsibilities. I have 2 persons here to help me discuss this particular topic. I have Lawyer Justice Oteng. Lawyer Justice Oteng is a senior associate at Addison Bryce Loan. He's a member of the Ghana Bar Association and the Ghana Restructuring and Insolvency Association. He's a legal representative for Ghana India Trade Advisory Chamber. He's an executive council member of the Meridian Ghana Conference of SDA. Yes, he's an Adventist. He's a church clerk at Medina East SDA Church. And obviously, one of his focal areas is human rights. That's why he's here with us. Justice.
Thank you.
You're going to help us do justice to this topic. And I also have our friend. Right now, there she's our friend. We have to accept that she's our friend. The Chief Superintendent herself, Usua Chirima. You know she's a director for DOFSU, and she's with the Ghana Police Service, and she is a lawyer. All combined together. Yes, she is. Chief Superintendent, you are welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we just have an hour. So today, dear, we will be going a little bit fast, so bear with us. I know that you are going to really appreciate what we are going to discuss today. So let me start from this question. Justice, when we talk of vulnerable groups, who are they?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity and for the question.
Okay, so let me go to our lady, Chief. So, Chief, vulnerable groups.
Okay.
So, vulnerable groups. When we talk of vulnerable groups, who are vulnerable groups?
Okay, so normally when we talk about vulnerable groups, they are normally on the average people who are normally affected, who are not, to put this in a layman's language, who are vulnerable to abuse and discrimination of all forms. And normally when you go to every country across the world, it's normally women, children, and the aged, and maybe some other smaller groups. And so, simply put, vulnerable people are normally people who are vulnerable to abuse, discrimination as a result of who they are, as a result of their gender or age or race and their sex.
But the question is, why should they be vulnerable? So you gave an example of like women, the aged, children. Why should they be vulnerable?
Okay, so this vulnerability comes as a result of a lot of factors. Some of them might be the way such groups are perceived in the society. So, for instance, some of our cultural values, norms, are not friendly, so to speak, to women in a way. And as a result, a woman can be abused as a result. For instance, when you have comments like, Oba nim yansa, Oba dream jet is our crowd dream. It's a form of an abuse. And it's statement that people normally make. Oh, go and sit somewhere. When men are discussing things, women should be. But traditionally, that's not how it used to be. Because if you remember, I mean, growing up, we used to hear our elderly people say, when there's a problem at the chief's palace, exactly. Let's go and see Abrewa. Yeah. So we have that positive side of culture that promotes women as, you know, also knowledgeable, smart, who have wisdom. And that, but with time, you know, culture is not static. Culture changes.
But
and sometimes
it be changing positively.
You know, change can be negative or positive. It depends which direction it goes. So it's not just changing, but changing in which, you know, it can be negative or positive. So you have some of our cultural norms that will project women, and others that would also make a woman. So it normally boils down to the norms, the values within the society. And sometimes, even when we used to go to school, I don't know whether you had that experience where you have some of our brothers and sisters who are disabled, and you have people naming and shaming them, like giving them some names and just to tease them. These are forms of abuse, and they are being abused as a result of the fact that they are different from, quote and unquote, the normal, you know, us.
Okay, so let me ask this question. If they are vulnerable, ordinarily society should be protecting them.
Yeah.
So that vulnerability then shouldn't be there. Are we then saying that society isn't protecting these vulnerable groups?
So, you know, we have laws with different. First and foremost, the Constitution protects everybody. Chapter 5 of the Constitution, talks about freedoms, fundamental human rights, and freedoms of every individual. Then we have laws that have been passed by Parliament to also protect the individual. It's one thing us having the law, one thing implementing them, and another one you have some people in the society also breaking the laws. And so yes, we have the laws, they are enforced, but you still have instances where people are abused as a result of who they are, as a result of the fact that they are old. For instance, we have old women in some environments. When things are not going well for the young ones, they call them out as witches. It's a form of abuse. We have laws to protect these people. It's a matter of getting to the attention of the state institutions like the police, and then for us to take the necessary action. So there are laws. We need to implement them. We are implementing them. But some of them are such that if it doesn't come to the attention of the police, or we don't chance on it, then it becomes a different matter altogether.
Justice.
Yes.
Yes, help us. Your man was giving you some issues, huh?
Definitely, yeah.
And it's easy. Yeah. But I'm hoping it's working now. So Justice, tell us a little bit about vulnerable groups and why they are vulnerable in the first place.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Underlining this whole concept of who a vulnerable person or vulnerable groups are suggests very important things you have to look at. They are vulnerable because of their economic status. They are vulnerable because of their social condition. And they are also vulnerable because of their physical state. As a result of that, they are disadvantaged. And they will need specific interventions or special care to take care of their situations. And critically, when we talk of these vulnerable groups, you are looking at, as my colleague mentioned, we are looking at women, children, the aged, and even the disabled. These persons or group of persons, as a result of where they find themselves in the society suffer exclusion, they suffer discrimination. They also are stigmatized because of the peculiar circumstances or conditions of life they find themselves in. So there is an imperative that there is this body of law or society puts in place a system that gives them protection because of the situation they find themselves. So generally, that is the initial comment I'll give in respect of who vulnerable groups are.
Okay. So we are talking about the Constitution. And we know that the Constitution is protecting them. When it comes to children, we have the whole Children's Act, a whole act.
Yes.
When it comes to persons with disabilities, we have the whole act.
Yes.
The question is it working? Are these interventions working?
Well, I think there is always a gap between legislation and what actually happens in practice in terms of implementation of the law in action. So, for instance, when you look at the Disability Act, it provides that within 10 years of the implementation of the Act, all public institutions and offices should make those places accessible to persons with disability. The question is that it has been over 10 years of implementation, but we are still struggling with this implementation. And even with the legislative instrument that is supposed to give teeth to the enactment, it still has not been enacted. And one important aspect of the law which says that there should be rehabilitation centers for persons with disability throughout the regions of Ghana. I mean, you can barely count 5 of them out of the 16 regions that we have in Ghana. So the difficulty has always been the implementation of the law. The laws are fantastic, but how we implement it to help our vulnerable persons or group is the issue. And I think for me, the main concern has always been this ubiquitous problem of resource constraint. Always you don't have the finances to be able to implement the provisions of the law. For instance, you have the Domestic Violence Act, which says that we should have a domestic violence fund of a sort. But I bet you my colleague can confirm, virtually, I mean, there's nothing in there. It's just in the name. So the problem has always been the gap between the law and implementation. So that is the main concern I see.
So, Chief, he brought a very important one up, the Domestic Violence Fund.
Yeah.
What's happening to it?
Okay, so honestly, I'm not able to speak to it.
Okay.
But all that I can say is that for now, we have not been able to access it. But that's all that I can say. I cannot speak to it any further. I mean, if you want the right information, you contact the Ministry of Gender.
You're not going to go there with me at all.
No, I mean, honestly, because I don't work, it's been controlled by Ministry of Gender. So it's for them to speak to that. I mean, so.
Okay, so someone will be wondering what the fund is for. So most often than not, if someone is domestically abused, the person's
it's for a lot of things, including training, rehabilitation,
exactly,
for those of us in that space. So, for instance, police, if we need training for DOFSU staff, I mean, because we are in that, we can also apply to the ministry for
the person, the survivors.
Too, yes,
yes. So you train the survivers,
and the family,
you equip them, the family, help the family as well.
Yeah. So it does a lot of things. It's supposed to do a lot of things.
It's supposed to.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there.
I don't know.
You don't want to go there with me.
No, but to add to that, isn't it striking that the head of DOFSU is even not in a position to tell us the status of this fund? It tells us a lot about how we treat these vulnerable groups. I mean, issues concerning them is not on the front burner for the state.
But the issue is that we have all the right laws, perfect laws. And the implementation
is nothing, yeah.
Okay. So yes, we've discussed generally vulnerable groups and the fact that the Constitution, Chapter 5 of the Constitution, 1992 Constitution, protects them. Please, I always tell people this. If you don't have a constitution, just get one. You might think you don't understand, but trust me, as we start reading and telling you about it and going into it with you, you better appreciate it. So get yourself a constitution, the small one. It's just 30 cedis, 25 cedis. That's a law that protects you. So if you don't have a copy and you can't read it, then hey, how are you protecting yourself? So now we are zooming into the 3 groups we are going to discuss this evening: the aged, women, and then children. Let me start with the aged. Chief, the aged, do we have any laws protecting the aged?
Not specific law to say, but our laws are gender neutral, and so it means it doesn't matter in terms of age. It doesn't matter who is where. So, for instance, if you take the Domestic Violence Act, it would cover the aged as well, because it talks about a person, and a person includes disabled person, a person includes the aged, a person includes the child and children. Then you look at the Criminal Offences Act, you look at the Disability Act. So all these acts protect them. But of course, there are some policies that the best people to speak to will be staff of the Ministry of Gender. They have a national policy on aging with dignity, and some policy, yes. So there's a policy in place to protect them as to how they can really contribute to the development of the country, as well as also their personal development, their own safety and security. So there's a national policy on that.
But are they vulnerable, Justice?
Definitely they are vulnerable. As a result of their age, they have concerns as to their health, because as we age, we suffer some infirmities. It's very natural with the human condition. And so they will need special care and attention. So when you are old, you are unable to work, you have certain vulnerabilities, i.e. health status will decline. Also, you need assistance and support. Elsewhere, we have the aged home and what have you. But in Ghana, I mean, it's left to the family, the nuclear or the extended family, to come in to support the elderly. So
if they don't come in support, then what happens to the elderly?
Well, so that's where, as Senior said, that's why sometimes they are exposed to all forms of abuse. So some of them are labeled as witches or wizards, especially the women are always witches. And that's why we have the witch camps all over. You realize most of them.
Isn't that even discriminatory in itself?
It is discriminatory. It is another form of abuse. And that's why we need certain facilities where the elderly can go to, centers, like he said, outside the country. We have centers where the aged can go, play games, have time with their, fellow colleagues. Because when at a certain age, old age is such that sometimes they begin to act a bit different, and people who might not understand it might think they are witches, or maybe it's something spiritual, and then they tend to treat them in a way that is not pleasant. And sometimes too, they also eject some of them out because they become economically dependent on the younger ones, and so they rather rent a room that they stay in to an outsider to get some money and push the old person outside. So
shouldn't there be some laws that will, in a way, should I say, we have the Children's Act and we get there. That, in a way, forces the parents to look after the child. Shouldn't there be something that also forces the child to look after the elderly when they also are, in their capacity to look after themselves?
Yes. So in researching for this program, I came across this aged bill. It has been in the offing for the past 10 years. It's still in the state of a bill. I mean, there's no sense of urgency to implement.
What does a bill mean?
Well, essentially, it provides certain protection.
What does a bill mean? A bill
itself. A bill means, well, I wouldn't say a law, a policy program that is presented to Parliament. For it to be passed, then it becomes a law for the governance of our society. So
it means that we have it as a bill in
Parliament,
and Parliament has not passed it. So it's not a law yet.
No, it's not yet a law. It's still, in the process of becoming a law. It's still in the state of a bill.
So how do we protect them? So let's say you are talking to an ordinary person on the street. How do we protect the elderly, especially those who are who are often name called, like witches, and how do we protect them?
Okay, so that's why I'm saying that we have laws that are not age specific, but it's generic. So what happens is that whatever abuse they are facing, we look at the facts of the case, compare it under which law they are protected, and then we take the matter up. So for instance, if we find an aged person, we reach out normally to the NGOs who are able to take older women, or we also go through social welfare who are able to also assist us, maybe talk to the family members to say, okay, this is a situation. Educate them on what it means being old and the need for them to be protected. And then we find shelter for them. So it depends on the situation that they find themselves in.
Okay.
And to add to it, it's important that the state play a very crucial role in putting up systems and institutions in place to take care of the aged. And I must commend the state for the provision in the National Health Insurance Scheme, where a person of 70 years and above, you are not required to pay premium, can be enrolled on the system. These are some of the things we expect that it put in place to protect the aged. Yes.
Okay, so now let's move to children. Who is a child?
Okay, so a child is a person below the age of 18 years.
Until undu 18 years, ayakola.
Oyakora. Yes, under 18 years.
And what are some of the rights of our children?
Well, there are several of them.
Because I need protected of power.
Yeah, there are lots of them.
Yes, because they are very vulnerable. They are not of age. They are not matured enough. One critically is a right to education. Every child has a right to equal educational opportunities, and this is guaranteed by the Constitution, and even as well as the Children's Act. The right to access healthcare is a very important right of the child. Even the right to a name, a child is entitled to that right.
So if the man says, "I'm not going to name the child," that is an affront to the law.
Absolutely.
So please, if you've given birth, you see, you have a child somewhere, you say you're not going to name the child, please. Yeah, it's an affront to the law. You can be taken up.
But just to chip in this, it depends. So if the man says he's not the father, then that issue has to be ironed out first. Okay. Even though under the law, once you have sex with a person and the person names you, it's your responsibility to take care of the person. But when it comes to the naming and you raise an issue, then that's where we come in and say, okay, let's do DNA to see who is the father of the. And once it's your child, you must name the child.
You have no choice than to name the child. But DNA is expensive, or the state comes in.
Well, it depends. Depending on the situation, sometimes we solicit for funding. Depending on the situation, yes.
Dependent.
So it's not really, but if it depends on the situation, we do DNA, we look for funding to support.
Okay. Any other rights of a child?
Oh, the child has a right to play, so has a right to social activity. So you can have a child and say the child should always be indoors reading. No, the child has a right to be protected against all form of violence, yes, and the child has a right not to be forced into marriage, betrayal, and then the child also has a right.
So a 14-year-old child cannot marry?
No, it's against the law.
That's a law?
Yeah.
In reality?
Yes.
12-year-old, 9, 8?
Yes.
They're getting married?
Exactly. So when we find such people, it's against all those who are party to the marriage would be prosecuted.
Please, did you hear? Please repeat it.
Okay. So all those who were part of the marriage ceremony, who condone in one way or the other, when we get the information, all of you would be prosecuted. And so when the child is under, a child cannot marry. That's it. And then some of the rights to, like we said, a right to a name. And then it is the child also must not be discriminated against because of who the parents are, economic status, status or social status. No. So if you discriminate against a child because of who the child is in terms of economic or his economic status, is also against the law.
Okay, Justice, I want us to the distinction between forced labor and apprenticeship. Because let's say I'm a fisherman, and ordinarily I want my child to be a fisherman in future. And so I'm going to sea, and I'm going with my child to sea. And you are saying,
No.
I'm going to the cocoa farm, and my child is going with me. You say forced labor. What is all that? I'm teaching my child how to fish.
So essentially, the critical distinction you would have to look at is whether that kind of engagement affects the health, the educational opportunities of the child, and even the growing up of the child. So to the extent that all that the child does is just to follow their parents to maybe the farm on a weekend, and is not forced to carry a load which is greater than what his body can carry. I mean, that would not be forced labor. But where you expose the child to economic activity that impacts negatively on the child's health, because of whatever engagement, the child doesn't go to school, that would amount to forced labor. Or he's supposed to do this hazardous work. For instance, doing quarrying and in a factory that exposes them to hazardous substances and what have you. So there's a bit of a distinction. Normal assisting your parents with, farm work, which is not heavy or burdensome on the child. It doesn't affect the health of the child, the rights to education and others. That is allowable within our social context. But any other thing, any other labor that impacts on the life, i.e. health, education, and the social opportunities of the child, would amount to forced labor.
So just to add to what Senior said, so anything concerning light, a child at age 13 can engage in light work. Okay, so hazardous work normally starts with at age 18 onwards. So just to add, I agree with everything that he said.
So a child comes the parent, I know my right. The mother beats him a bit, and he just starts shouting, I know my right, I know my right. Then he or she rushes to the police station and reports the parent. And in certain circumstances, the police will follow the child, go to the house, and go arrest the parent.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to us?
Okay, so see, the law, under the Children's Act, the law allows a parent to discipline a child. But in doing that, there's a caveat. In doing that, you must take into consideration the health of the person, the nature of, the personality of the person. So for instance, let me give you an example so that it becomes easier. So for instance, if a child of say 3 years or 4 years maybe pushes something down, your TV down, you can't just go and take a cane or a slippers or a shoe and start beating that child. Because whatever punishment you give to the child should be able to appreciate the reason for that punishment.
Chief, my TV is down there.
Yeah.
And the child is by the TV, and he accepts that he did it. I should
it's
now be there now. I'm going to assess whether or not I should.
It's even your responsibility to even protect the child from harm. So so it's your responsibility. You are in the house with a child of 4 years. You shouldn't be leaving the fire on. You shouldn't be leaving glasses there. You shouldn't be leaving your knife. So you yourself, you are even exposing the child to harm. Yeah. So we can even turn around and say you are exposing the child to danger or harm. Yes. So once you are in an environment, it's your responsibility to protect the child. So if you want to punish, it's like punishing our brothers and sisters who are maybe, I don't know whether it's the right word, mentally retarded. If she does something wrong and then you go and pick a cane and start caning that person, that could amount to even torture. because the child cannot even comprehend what she's done and what you are doing. And what's the essence of that punishment? So if you want to punish or correct a child, you should take into consideration the age of the child, the physique of the child, so that somebody can be, let's say, 16 years, but you can see that the person is not well, the person is in a way feeble, and then you go and take a cane and start whipping the person, or you plug an iron when it's hot, then you kind of press it against the child's
That's causing bodily
exactly
injury,
exactly
bodily harm, yeah.
So you can't just
So we are not saying that parents and teachers shouldn't punish the children when they go wrong, but it should commemorate with.
So okay, even as it stands now,
Yes.
okay, under international law, when you look at the children, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the statement of the Committee of the Child, it says that corporal punishment should be stopped. Corporal punishment is prohibited. It's not in the CRC black and white, but per their pronouncements and their statement to countries, including Ghana, it's clear that we must prohibit corporal punishment. So even our law under the Children's Act, we must amend it to get that section out of it. So I'm not going to sit here and say beat your child. No, don't beat your child.
The law is saying the law is not saying I can't be my child.
So don't say that once we are signatory to an international treaty,
But it's yet to be.
so Ghana, in a way, we are not conforming to something we have signed onto.
In a nutshell, if my child does
So
something
see,
wrong,
the law
I can't beat my
allows
child.
you to correct your child. Correction comes in different forms. Why do we want to limit it to beating a
okay,
child?
so you've done all the forms and it's not working. Now you want the other one.
You want to try the cane? No, the cane. You see, the average person is easier to use the cane than to use a different method.
Yeah.
Of maybe talking to the child, allowing making the child aware of the consequences of the actions, maybe withdrawing certain things that are not basic. Okay, withdrawing certain privileges that are not really basic. You can't say the child is wrong, has offended, has done something wrong, so you're not going to provide the person with food. That one, you'll be going against the law.
Yes, and well, one quick one. There was this case where the child went to report the father. The father was arrested and everything, and later when the father went back home, he said he wasn't going to take care of the child.
And that is also another offense.
And they forced him to take care of the child.
Yes,
schooling, feeding, where she will sleep, everything.
Because the child has a right to the necessaries of life, including health.
And the child is not going according to your dictates. So if she thinks she's grown, she should go and live on her own.
No, you
Mama might be
can't say-
forced to look after the child.
No, but obviously you have a duty of care towards your child.
And the child has a duty of respect to me. And if she's not giving it.
Well, my understanding of this whole legal framework that seeks to protect children is that the law does not prohibit guidance or correction, but it must be done in a way that ensures the dignity of the child. I mean, slapping a child. The whole essence of punishment is to let the person understand what he has done and to take steps to amend his ways. Slapping a child will not necessarily result in the child changing his ways. So there are other forms of punishment that I would recommend to parents and guardians to use rather than to, as it were, molest or attack or inflict bodily harm on children.
So now let's talk about children and sex.
Yes.
Just, I think yesterday in the news, Nigeria, 10-year-old girl. We have 3 guys having their way with her, videoing it and putting it on social media. And the idea was that this girl is on TikTok, always half naked and shaking what God has given her and everything. And so she's already a bad girl.
No.
So if she's a bad girl, she deserves what is coming to her because she's already sleeping around. Let's talk about children and sex. Educate us on it.
So she's not a bad girl. Okay, that child needs protection and guidance from the parent. And so such a child needs help. I don't know the law in Nigeria when it has to do with defilement and all that. So I'll just stick to Ghana. So under our laws, defilement is a child, sleeping with a person below the age of 16 years, and that's defilement. So 10 years falls within that bracket. So it doesn't matter whether she does, assuming the person were to be a Ghanaian and it happened in Ghana, it wouldn't matter if the person, she's been sleeping with 10 men, whatever, she even calls them, it just doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, because the law is clear that when you sleep with a child under 16 years cannot give consent to sex. It's the critical ingredient here. Under 16 years cannot give consent to sex. So Ghanaians should take note. If a child below 16 years, if you go and tell her that, oh, you are 15, yeah, okay, I want to have sex, the child, or even the child herself comes to you and say, I feel like having sex today, have sex with me. She herself undresses herself, she lies down for you to, even she holds your manhood and put it inside her private part, it is still defilement.
Let's stress it. So someone below the age of 16 years cannot consent to sex.
Yes.
So if the girl herself comes to your room, takes off all her clothes, 15 years or below, lies on your bed, opens her legs, and you start doing.
Yes. Not that you start doing, she cries, she start doing, and you allow it. It is defilement. Because see, the child cannot give consent. When the child is 16 years and above, 16 years, you can give consent to sex. A female, and in Ghana, a man cannot be raped unless the person is below 15 years.
Debate.
I know, right? Because when they talk about 15 years, below 15 years, it wasn't specific to say female. But 16 years, it was specific on rape. It was specific as to the sex, that if you sleep with a person 16 years, a female 16 years and above, without her consent, that amounts to rape.
Say, obi do 16 years. Oba ebi do
or 15 and a half.
Or a 15 and a half. Do 16 years. Na oba wo dem no beda wo pass no be ni name say nene ye. Na wo nene ya. Yen bisa se opene so bi obi say no oba na na de no ho ba ye. No opene say o de me ho be hye me emfa ye ho. Ade e pese ho ane say one na da na. One na da ni age e den. Ni age below 16 na no anu ne dokotum. And that is that. Yeah. There are some girls, small girls, they are bad girls. Oh.
No, there's no bad girl. I mean, don't let us label them, because immediately we label them, we excuse their behavior, excuse the behaviors of the
what about men. They are both tainted?
Well, I think I would want to contribute. Then I
okay,
would attend to
just do.
So I think that the whole idea of the defilement it shouldn't just be limited to girls. The boy child is also vulnerable. So when you look critically at the definition, it talks of natural or unnatural carnal knowledge of a person below 16 years. We have boys who have been abused, you know, sodomized here and there. So all of those category of persons also fall under that bracket. But critically, the society takes a view that a person below 16 years is composement, or I would say doesn't have the menstrual. I'm going a bit into the law.
Calm down.
Doesn't have the capacity to form that mind to be able to give consent to that.
So in a nutshell, that child cannot have sex. Should not have sex.
Well, whether that child should or should not, our position is that that child is bereft of that capacity to agree to sex. So whether she agrees or otherwise, we are saying
the law
is saying that please, these people, they are out of your reach. So if you want somebody to have sexual intercourse, go and look for 16 years and above.
So if the person is not 16 years, depending on these 16 years,
it's out.
Almost they catch them young and they should be.
But just to put a caveat, that the fact that 16 years and above, I mean 16 years, from 16 years you can have sex, doesn't mean we are encouraging 16-year-olds to have sex. No, they should focus on their education and go to school. We are not saying, oh, because you hear us saying that you are 16 years, you can have sex, so you go out and start having sex. No. There are a lot of repercussions. Teenage pregnancy can come in. You can be infected with HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases.
So focus on school.
Yes, so focus on school. Focus on school, and then when you are of age, like us and you want to have sex.
Like that's
Then, but for now, school is important. So please, if you are 16, 17, 18, 19, please focus on school. Go to school. When you are older after school, there are a lot of men around who, I mean, you will even be difficult choosing.
You'll be running away from it. Okay, so so we have the, generally speaking, a girl being defiled. So let's say a girl has been defiled and goes to the courts and can you take us through? Because if someone is defiled and that person who defiled that other person is underage, can that person be prosecuted? If that person can be prosecuted, the question is, do we have a timeline, Chief?
Okay, so see, if the under the Juvenile Justice Act, when you from arrest of a juvenile is a person who is in conflict with the law. So from the arrest of the juvenile to conviction, everything should be done within 3 months.
3 months?
Yes. So if for whatever reason the police we are not able to do that, then after 3 months the person will be set free.
So if someone has been defiled and then you take the person to the accused to court, within 3 months, if the person is a juvenile, the person is under 18, meaning that within 3 months, prosecution must end its case. If not, that person will go scot-free.
Yes, that's the law. It's black and white.
So I think the policy behind this is there. It's a simple one. You have the state, i.e. the police, the attorney general, having at its disposal all the resources and prosecuting a child who is considered to be vulnerable. So we expect that prosecution should be able to bring all these facts and use its resources to prosecute the child within a reasonable period of time. Or otherwise, when prosecution drags, it is likely to also affect the rights of the accused person, even though that accused person is a child, is likely to affect the rights of the accused person.
But can't this be abused by the police? Because they know 3 months. All I have to do is drag my feet and then 6 months, 7 months, the court throws the case out of court.
Why would the police abuse it?
Because
it is rather the lawyers sometimes. Sometimes the lawyers on the juvenile side that sometimes we want to drag it. But why would the police? The only time, if it was sometimes, you know, gathering in evidence is not that easy. So, for instance, if there is a need for us to gather some form of evidence and it will linger on, then we'll have issues. Then we might run beyond the 3 months. So normally what we do is that if there are multiple offenses that the juvenile might have committed, we just look at for one of them that we are able to gather evidence and then go to court. It might be a lesser offense, but see, even when the juvenile is convicted, the maximum for the juvenile is 3 years.
But at least the family will find peace, that at least justice was served. Because I'm looking at the one who has been defiled and the family and the torture they go through, and then you see the same guy who did that to your child walking about your society, going scot-free. That's if justice has not been served. So if justice has not been served, then I might as well put justice.
No, but I would want to add that you should not forget the mere fact that somebody is labeled as an accused person does not take away the rights of that person. You must also bear in mind that this accused person is also a child and also equally deserves protection from the law. So the state coming against the child, I think that 3 months is a reasonable period for the state, to put their house in order.
You take out the holidays, you take out the judges going on their retreat, you take out the legal vacations, all that, and you're looking at 3 months. And looking at our state, the lack of resources the state has at its disposal to even do its work.
For now,
DOVSU and the prosecution and the AG. You see, I understand the other side of it, but I'm looking at what happens to the defiled.
So this is a position of the law now, and that's what we have to work with. So it's up to civil society individuals to say, can we amend the law? But for now, this is what we work with.
Let's go on this short break. We'll be right back.
Hope Channel Ghana presents Hymns and Worship Experience dubbed Thy Kingdom Come. Join the Spirit-filled worship experience with Legon SDA Church Choir, Inspirational Choir, Hanson Road SDA Choir, Marvelous Choir, The Temple Choir, Hymns and Worship Experience featuring Joel Brian Edu, Ifa Davy, and Pastor Ofori Atta. Happening live at Garrison SDA Church Auditorium. Date 30th April 2022 at 3 p.m. prompt. The rate is free, so don't you miss this captivating moment to be in the presence of God's throne. Be there and you will surely be blessed. Amen.
To the Law Chamber, where we discuss, and we will be discussing, all the rights of every vulnerable group, and we'll continue this next week. So we've discussed the aged, we've discussed children. Now let's get to women. Women, justice.
Yeah.
Women, do you have any rights?
Oh, definitely, women have rights. The Constitution, as earlier indicated, Chapter 5 of the Constitution is replete with several provisions dealing with the rights of women. And some of the rights of women include right to maternity care. So, for instance, if you employ a woman and she takes seed, the law requires that you give them that opportunity to seek their maternal leave, so that they can cater for their pregnancy and also return. Also, the right of women to access educational opportunities. Education is a right of every Ghanaian. It is not limited to whether you're a man or a woman. And women have that right to access education. And also the right to health care. Women have that right, and in fact it's enshrined in the Constitution, that right to have access to healthcare. And also employment opportunities. Employment opportunities. Women have the right to access employment opportunities. And one of the main issues that has come up has always been how some of our women are treated when they join these security services. So, for instance, there's a requirement in some of these security institutions that if you become a member for a number of months or years, you can't get pregnant, or if you do, you may not be permitted to continue. So these are some of the forms of discrimination, because they are women and they are going to get married and they are also going to bear children. Because of that state, they are discriminated against. So these are some of the issues that, to my mind, affects our women.
Chief, any other?
Oh, I think he's said it all. I mean, every woman we have the same right as any other individual, like men will have, but the only difference is what he has added. He's stated earlier on that they have a right to maternity leave, and also the facility in which there should be provision for preschool, where the woman can leave the child and be able to attend school, attend to work, go to work. So basically, he's touched on all of that.
Are these rights, apart from it being theoretical, like, does it exist? Does it work?
Well, I think that as with many of our laws here, there is always this gap between implementation and what is in the law. A prospective employer will look at a female and say, well, this lady I'm going to employ. In the next 9 months, she'll be pregnant, and she'll be asking for time for leave. Whilst on leave, the employer will be required to pay the salary and all of that. So that consideration is there. How am I going to benefit economically from employing a woman because of these peculiar situations they might find themselves in? The law is there, but critically, it is an economic decision for employers, for instance, for employers to make. I am going to employ a woman into the firm. Reasonably, a woman might take seed or get pregnant and go on maternity leave back. How is that going to affect my work? Do I have the facilities to provide what the law says, preschool and other facilities? These are some of the considerations that employers make and then discriminate against employing women into the firm.
And their promotion as well. Sometimes women are discriminated because of discriminated against because of promotion, because of their sex.
So you've gone on maternity leave 3 months, and sometimes you even ask for extra months because of health issues. You come back and it's as if all your work has been given to someone else. So theoretically you are protected, but practically you are not.
We cannot make a general statement as though women in Ghana are not protected. No, the laws are there. Women are protected, but it's about, and it's not everybody who will conform to the law. So if you find yourself in a space where you are being discriminated against, you only need to speak to a lawyer. For instance, if it borders on civil matters, you only have to speak to a lawyer for the lawyer to listen to you and say, okay, advise you accordingly as your legal right. If it also borders on criminality like sexual harassment, because I mean it happens in the workplace. So if you are being sexually harassed at your workplace, you also have to reach out to the police, and then we'll listen to you, look at the facts. If there is evidence, why not? We will take the person on.
How can the church help?
Wow.
Of all these vulnerable groups in our church, how can the church help?
I think that one critical role the church can play to assist these vulnerable groups, critical, is education. The church is a place where people are very receptive to whatever comes out from the pulpit. So if the church leadership takes upon itself to educate members on how we treat vulnerable groups. Interestingly, last week was Possibilities Day for the Seventh-day Adventists. It's a day that is dedicated to people with special needs, these vulnerable groups, and how we treat them. So the whole service was dedicated to educating members on how we treat people who are sick, the aged, the children, and also women at large. So an important thing the church can do is to educate its members. And also the church should not take upon itself where there is physical abuse and purport to settle those matters internally. The church can advise members to report some of these incidents to the police and also other law enforcement agencies to deal with it. In that way, to serve as a deterrent to other members not to also follow suit. And we all join the bandwagon to protect these rights of vulnerable men.
Chief, your final words.
The church has a lot to do, lots of things they can do to help. One of them is being circumspect in especially some of the churches that will normally pronounce somebody as a witch and all that. Mostly is the women that are pronounced, witches. If they can manage that and prevent themselves from, stop. Instead of calling out people as witches, they should find a way of handling their services such that women are not exposed to all form of abuse. And also the church, as my brother said, we need education. So what you are doing here is a religious TV. You are using your platform to educate people on their rights and the forms of abuse that they might be experiencing and where to reach out to help. So for me, it's education and also being circumspect with your pronouncement, declaring people witches and wizards. It's not the way to go.
Just as your final words.
Oh, I would say that now we have been enlightened about the rights of these vulnerable groups. It is important that all of us come together to protect the rights of these people. Well, today I'm a healthy being. Tomorrow I can be disabled. I can also find myself in that situation. So it is important that we would respect the rights of these groups and help them at every point of the way.
And we can also put the helpline out as well.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so it's 0800 000 900. 0800 000 900.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so I'll be ending with this quote. Let me get it. It says that Proverbs 3:8-9. Open your mouth for the mute, for the right of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the right of the poor, the needy, and the vulnerable. There are lots of vulnerable people in our churches, in our workplaces, around us. The next time you see someone being abused or not, his or her rights not being protected, please do so. And please, a short announcement. Madam Victoria Yabuama, alias Original, her funeral rites will be taking place at Medina Central this Sunday. So please do join us on Sunday at Medina Central for Madam Victoria Yabuama, alias Original, her funeral. Please do join us. And please, please stay safe. God bless. And until next week, 6:30, please be safe.